The morning was just like any other for the delivery man. He had been driving around the city for hours, delivering packages to various businesses. It was a job he had been doing for years, and while it wasn't glamorous, it provided a steady income. The route he was on today took him through a busy part of town, with people bustling around on every street corner. He was used to the noise and activity. It was the rhythm of the city, something he had come to enjoy in a strange way. As he turned the corner, he noticed a young woman standing by the side of the road. She was waving her arms, trying to flag down a taxi, but it seemed like no one was stopping for her. He could see the frustration on her face as she glanced at her phone, checking the time. She seemed to be in a hurry. He knew he couldn't just drive by. There was something about her expression that caught his attention. It was more than just the typical rush of someone trying to catch a ride. She looked stressed, maybe even a little panicked. And then he saw it, her suitcase. It wasn't just any suitcase. It was large, one of those heavy-duty travel bags that looked like it carried more than just clothes. She was clearly on her way somewhere important. Without really thinking about it, he slowed the truck and pulled up beside her. "You need a ride somewhere?" he asked, his voice carrying the usual warmth he tried to bring to his interactions with strangers. The woman looked up, startled for a second, but then relief washed over her face. "Yes, please. I'm trying to get to the airport, but no one will stop for me," she said, her voice tight with urgency. He glanced at the traffic around them. It wasn't that there wasn't a lot of taxis. They just weren't stopping for her. He could understand why she was stressed. Catching a flight was never an easy task, but it was always more stressful when you were running late. "I can give you a lift," he offered without hesitation, even though it would mean a slight detour from his delivery route. She looked him over, hesitating for a moment. He could see the doubt in her eyes, a natural hesitation to trust a stranger. But then she seemed to make up her mind. "Okay, thank you so much." She quickly opened the passenger door and slid into the front seat, placing her suitcase in the back. As soon as she was settled, he started driving, easing into the flow of traffic. The airport wasn't too far away, but it was still a good 15-minute drive. He could feel the tension in the air, both his and hers. He glanced over at her and noticed she was checking the time again, her fingers tapping nervously on the seat. "I'll get you there as fast as I can," he said, trying to break the silence. She looked up at him and gave a small smile. "Thanks, I really appreciate it. I'm trying to catch a flight to a job interview. It's kind of a big deal for me," she explained, her voice betraying just a hint of worry. The delivery man nodded, understanding the importance of a job interview. He had been in her shoes before, trying to make the best impression and hoping for a second chance. "What kind of job are you interviewing for?" he asked, genuinely curious. She seemed to relax a little as she spoke about it. "It's for a marketing position with a tech company. I've been wanting to work there for a long time. It's just, everything needs to go perfectly today." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment he could feel the weight of her anxiety. He wasn't one to offer advice, but he could tell that she was really invested in making this work. He nodded again, trying to reassure her with a calm smile. "You'll do great," he said simply. It wasn't much, but sometimes the right words could make a difference. The road to the airport was lined with tall buildings and the sound of honking horns from all directions. He could feel the tension in the car easing as the woman opened up a little more. They spoke about her journey, how she had moved to the city for school, and how this job was the next big step for her. It reminded him of his own younger days when he had dreams and ambitions of his own. He wasn't sure if he still had those dreams, but he liked hearing about hers. She seemed to brighten up as she talked about the company and the work they did. "They're a really innovative company," she said. "I think I could learn so much there. I really need this opportunity. It's my chance to make something of myself." It was clear how much this meant to her. He couldn't help but think that he was just a small part of her journey. But he still felt a sense of pride in being able to help her, even if it was just by driving her to the airport. As they neared the airport, the buildings grew taller and the streets more crowded. He could feel the urgency building in the car as the minutes ticked away. The woman glanced at her phone again, her expression growing more anxious. "I'm going to make it, right?" she asked almost to herself. "I can't afford to miss this flight." The delivery man glanced over at her, trying to offer some comfort. "You'll get there," he said with confidence. "Don't worry. It's going to be okay." Soon they reached the airport. He pulled up to the curb where taxis and buses were lining up to drop off passengers. She quickly unbuckled her seatbelt and turned to him with a grateful smile. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice sincere. "I don't know what I would have done without your help." He smiled back, waving off her thanks. "No problem at all. Good luck with your interview." She grabbed her suitcase from the back seat, hesitating for a moment before giving him a final wave. "Thanks again. I'll never forget this." With that, she hurried into the terminal, disappearing into the crowd. The delivery man watched her go, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. It was a small thing he had done, but it made a difference in her day. It wasn't something he had expected, but it made him feel good inside. As he drove away from the airport, the street started to calm down, and the reality of his job set in again. He still had more deliveries to make, but the encounter with the young woman had left an unexpected mark on him. He found himself thinking about her, wondering how the interview would go and whether she would get the job. He didn't think much of it at first, just a moment of kindness in an ordinary day. But little did he know, that act of helping a stranger would set off a chain of events that would change his life forever. The delivery man's life, though simple, was predictable. After dropping off the young woman at the airport, he went back to his usual route. He delivered packages, made small talk with his regular customers, and kept his mind focused on the work. He didn't dwell too much on the encounter with the girl, thinking it was just another fleeting moment in his day. But deep down, something about it stuck with him. The way she talked about her dreams, her hopes for that job, it reminded him of a time when he had those same feelings. His life had always been steady, but it lacked excitement. He had no major goals anymore, just the desire to keep things moving forward. There were moments when he wished he could do something more, something that would make him feel alive again. But those moments were rare, and he often pushed them aside, focusing instead on the present. As the days passed, life continued in its usual rhythm. The delivery man did his job, dealt with traffic, and occasionally had a short conversation with someone in the community. It wasn't glamorous, but it was reliable. He liked the peace that came with the routine. It was simple, safe. But then a few days later, he received a phone call from his boss. It was a call that would turn his life upside down. His boss, a stern but fair man, informed him that the company had been making some changes. They were tightening policies and cracking down on efficiency. He mentioned how there had been some complaints about drivers taking too many detours or being late with deliveries. The delivery man tried to explain that he was just helping someone in need, but it didn't matter. The decision had been made. He was being let go. The news hit him hard. He had been with the company for years, and though the work wasn't exciting, it had provided him with a steady income. Now, just like that, he was out of a job. The weight of uncertainty began to settle in. What was he going to do now? He spent the next few days in a daze. He tried to make sense of it all, but the more he thought about it, the more it seemed unfair. He had always been dependable. He had always done his job. Helping the girl had been a simple act of kindness, something anyone would have done in his place. Yet, somehow, it had cost him everything. The reality of his situation set in when he went to the unemployment office to file for benefits. Sitting in the sterile waiting room, surrounded by other people who were also trying to find their footing, he felt lost. He had no other skills to fall back on, no backup plan. This was the world he had built for himself, and now it was crumbling. For the next few weeks, he searched for work, but the job market was tough. He applied to various companies, but nothing seemed to stick. He was told he didn't have enough experience for certain roles or that they were looking for someone younger. Every rejection felt like a blow to his self-esteem. His confidence had always been fragile, but now it was shattered. One afternoon, as he sat in his small apartment scrolling through job listings online, his phone buzzed. It was an unfamiliar number. Hesitant, he picked it up. "Hello?" he said, unsure of what to expect. The voice on the other end was familiar, and it took him a moment to place it. "Hi, this is the girl from the airport," she said. He blinked in surprise, trying to remember the last time they had spoken. It felt like ages ago, but her voice brought him right back to that day. The rush, the car ride, the airport, it all came flooding back. "I remember you," he said, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "How did the interview go? Did you get the job?" There was a slight pause before she responded. "Actually, yes. I did get the job," she said, sounding excited. And that's not the only reason I'm calling. He raised an eyebrow, curious. Oh? I've been thinking about what you did for me, she continued. You didn't have to help me, but you did. You went out of your way. I know it probably didn't seem like a big deal to you, but it meant a lot to me. You were the reason I made it to my interview on time. So I wanted to ask, how are things going with you? He hesitated for a moment before answering. Not great, actually. I lost my job. The company let me go. She was quiet for a moment, and he could almost hear her processing the information. I'm so sorry to hear that, she said, her voice soft. But I think I might be able to help. The words hung in the air for a few moments before she continued. I work for this tech company now, and they're looking for someone reliable, someone with good work ethic. You might not have the exact experience they're looking for, but I know they value character, and I know you've got that. He was stunned. This wasn't what he had expected to hear. She was offering to help him. She barely knew him, and yet here she was reaching out to give him a chance. I really appreciate it, he said, trying to keep his voice steady, but I'm not sure I'm what they need. I don't have much experience with tech jobs or anything like that. Don't sell yourself short, she replied. The company values people who are dedicated, who are willing to learn, and I think you've got that in spades. Let me talk to them, okay? I'll put in a good word for you. The delivery man was speechless. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. It wasn't just a job offer, it was an opportunity he hadn't even dreamed of. I don't know what to say, he finally managed. Thank you. I don't know how to thank you enough. You don't have to, she said with a laugh. Just keep being the good person you are. It'll pay off. As the conversation ended, he sat there, his mind racing. Could this really be happening? Could this random act of kindness from a stranger lead to something more? For the first time in weeks, he felt a spark of hope. It wasn't just about finding a job. It was about finding a new direction. The girl had given him a chance when he hadn't even realized he needed one. He didn't know where this would lead, but he knew one thing. His life was about to change, and for the first time in a long time, he was ready for it. The following days felt like a blur. After his phone call with the girl from the airport, the delivery man couldn't shake the sense of disbelief. He kept replaying their conversation over and over in his mind, wondering if it had really happened. She had said she would put in a good word for him, but would that be enough? He was still unsure of himself. He had never worked in tech, never been part of a big company, and now he was supposed to step into that world. But at the same time, there was a small flicker of excitement that had been missing from his life for a long time. He had spent so many years in a job where the tasks were routine and predictable, but now something new was on the horizon. It was a chance, a real chance to change his life. But first, he had to face his own doubts. The morning after the call, he found himself pacing around his small apartment, wondering what to do next. Should he follow through with the opportunity, or was it all just a fleeting moment, a brief act of kindness that would fade away? He decided to take the first step. He sent a simple message to the girl, thanking her for reaching out and expressing his interest in the opportunity. Within minutes, she replied with a message that gave him more hope than he'd had in a long time. I've talked to them. They're interested in meeting you. Let's set up an interview. The excitement hit him like a wave, but it was quickly followed by nerves. An interview? He hadn't done an interview in years. He didn't even know what kind of questions they would ask. What if they didn't think he was the right fit? What if they saw him as just a delivery driver with no real experience? But there was no turning back now. He had made the decision to move forward, and now he had to face his fears head on. He spent the next few days preparing for the interview, reading everything he could about the company and the role. It was strange, to be honest. He wasn't used to this kind of preparation. But there was a fire inside him now, a desire to prove that he could do more, be more. The day of the interview arrived, and the delivery man dressed in his best clothes. It wasn't much, just a simple shirt and pants, but it was the best he had. He checked his reflection in the mirror and for the first time in a long while, felt a sense of pride in himself. This was a new beginning. No matter what happened, he knew he was taking a step toward something better. He arrived at the company's office, a modern building in the heart of the city. The lobby was sleek and polished, the kind of place where people in suits rushed around talking on their phones. It felt surreal to him, like he didn't belong in this world. He was just a delivery man after all, a simple guy with a simple job. But as he walked through the glass doors, he reminded himself that he deserved to be here. The receptionist greeted him with a friendly smile and asked him to take a seat. He looked around the lobby, taking in the large screens displaying company news and the shiny floors reflecting the fluorescent lights. It was all so different from the places he was used to. He could feel the anxiety building in his chest, but he tried to push it down. This was his moment. After what felt like an eternity, a young woman appeared at the door. She smiled and introduced herself as the hiring manager. She was tall, confident, and looked like she was in charge. He stood up quickly and followed her into a conference room, where a large table and several chairs waited. She offered him a seat and they both sat down. "So," she said, looking at his resume, "I see you've worked as a delivery driver for quite some time. Can you tell me a little about that?" His mind raced. He had been expecting a question like this, but now that it was here, he didn't know how to answer. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. "Well," he began, "I've been working as a delivery driver for years. It's not the most glamorous job, but it taught me a lot about responsibility. I've learned to manage time, deal with customers, and adapt to unexpected situations. It's given me a strong work ethic, and I'm always looking for ways to improve." The hiring manager nodded, jotting something down on her notepad. "That's good to hear. We value responsibility and the ability to adapt here. But what makes you interested in a role at a tech company? You don't have any direct experience in that field." He swallowed hard. "I know I don't have direct experience," he said, "but I've always been interested in technology. I've kept up with trends in the industry, and I believe my skills in logistics and customer service could transfer well to a role here. I'm a fast learner and I'm willing to put in the work to catch up." She leaned back in her chair, studying him for a moment. He could feel the weight of her gaze, and it made his stomach turn. But he kept his eyes on hers, determined not to back down. "All right," she said after a moment. "Let's talk about what this role would entail. We're looking for someone who can handle multiple tasks at once, someone who can manage relationships with clients, and someone who's comfortable working with data. How do you feel about that?" He nodded. "I'm comfortable with managing tasks and handling multiple responsibilities. In my previous job, I had to juggle several deliveries at once, and I often had to deal with client requests on the fly. I'm confident I can handle that." The interview continued for what felt like hours. They discussed his experience, his strengths, and his weaknesses. The hiring manager seemed impressed with his answers, though she still seemed cautious. He could sense that she was trying to gauge whether he would really fit in with the company's fast-paced environment. As the interview came to a close, she smiled and extended her hand. "Thank you for coming in today. We'll be in touch soon. It was nice talking to you." He shook her hand, feeling a mix of relief and nervousness. He had done his best, and now all he could do was wait. The next few days were a blur of uncertainty. He kept checking his phone, hoping for a call, but none came. The waiting was torture. He tried to keep busy, focusing on small tasks around his apartment, but his mind kept drifting back to the interview. Had he done enough? Was he the right fit? Finally, a week later, his phone rang. It was the company. His heart skipped a beat as he answered. "Hello? Hi, is this delivery man?" The voice on the other end asked. "Yes, it is," he replied, his voice shaky. "We'd like to offer you the position," the voice said. "We were impressed with your interview and your attitude. We think you'll be a great fit here." He froze. Was he hearing this right? He had gotten the job? "Yes, of course. I'd love to accept the position," he said, his voice cracking with excitement. The woman on the other end laughed. "Great, we'll send you the details soon. Welcome aboard." As he hung up the phone, he sat there in silence for a moment, unable to believe it. He had done it. He had gotten the job. And in that moment, he knew that his life had changed forever. The first day at the new job was a blur of nerves and excitement. The delivery man, now starting his new position, couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Walking into the company building, he felt a sense of both awe and insecurity. The lobby was grand, filled with people dressed in sharp suits and uniforms, the kind of people who seemed to have their lives in perfect order. He couldn't help but feel out of place. This was a world he was unfamiliar with, a world he had only seen from the outside. The receptionist smiled as he walked up to the desk. She was young and confident, with a welcoming smile that made him feel a little more at ease. "Welcome to company name," she said, handing him a visitor's badge. "You're in for a big day today. Everyone's excited to have you on board." He smiled nervously, taking the badge. Thanks, I'm excited too. And a little nervous, to be honest. The receptionist gave him a reassuring nod. Don't worry, you'll do fine. Just remember to breathe and you'll be great. He took a deep breath, trying to settle his racing heart. It wasn't just the newness of the environment that made him anxious. It was the fear of failure. Would he be able to keep up with everyone else? Would they see him as the new guy, the one who had no real experience in the field? But he couldn't dwell on these fears. He had come this far, and there was no turning back now. His manager greeted him with a warm handshake and led him to his desk, a small, clean workstation in a corner of the open office space. It wasn't much, but it was his space. The desk was neat with a computer and a few papers, but that was about it. It felt strange to sit at a desk all day instead of being on the road making deliveries, but this was the new reality. This was the start of something different. Throughout the day, he tried his best to learn everything he could. The team was friendly enough, though they seemed to have their own rhythm. Everyone had their own way of working, and he found himself trying to fit into a mold that felt unfamiliar. But he was determined not to give up. He asked questions, took notes, and did his best to keep up. The work itself was challenging. There were spreadsheets to manage, clients to communicate with, and reports to fill out. Every task felt like a mountain, but he was used to working hard. In his previous job, he had learned to push through tough situations. This was no different. Each time he struggled with a task, he reminded himself that he was capable of learning, that he was here for a reason. By the end of the day, he was exhausted, both physically and mentally. His mind was spinning with all the new information he had absorbed, and his body ached from sitting at a desk for so long. But there was a small sense of pride that he couldn't shake. He had made it through the first day. He had survived. As he left the office that evening, the city felt different. It felt more alive somehow, as if everything had changed in a single day. He still couldn't believe he was part of this world, but it felt right. It was strange to think that just a few weeks ago, he had been driving around delivering packages, unsure of what the future would bring. Now here he was, with a chance to make something of himself. The next few days were a blur of learning and adapting. There were moments when he felt completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of new information, but he kept pushing forward. He asked questions, took extra time to read through his tasks, and made sure he was as prepared as possible for each day. Slowly but surely, he began to feel more comfortable. He wasn't perfect, but he was getting better. The people around him started to notice his efforts. His manager complimented him on his work ethic, and one of his co-workers even pulled him aside one afternoon to say that she appreciated how quickly he was learning. Those small moments of recognition kept him going. Even when things felt difficult, they reminded him that he was on the right path. One afternoon, as he was wrapping up a task, he got a message from the girl who had helped him get the job. "How's the first week been?" The message read. He smiled and typed out a quick reply. "Tough, but good. I'm still trying to find my rhythm." Her response came quickly. "You'll get there. I know it's a lot, but I'm proud of you for sticking with it." His heart swelled with gratitude. She didn't have to check in on him, but she did. She had been the one who had given him the chance to turn his life around, and now, here she was, cheering him on from the sidelines. He owed her so much, but all he could do was keep moving forward. A few weeks passed, and he settled into the routine. He wasn't the fastest employee, and he still had a lot to learn, but he was improving every day. The anxiety that had gripped him at the start slowly began to fade. He wasn't the new guy anymore. He was just another member of the team, doing his part. It was a feeling he had never experienced before. Belonging. It wasn't about the job title or the office space. It was about the sense of purpose he had found. One afternoon, his manager called him into her office. "I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing," she said, her tone friendly but serious. "I'm doing well, I think," he replied. "It's still a lot to learn, but I'm getting there." She nodded. "You're doing great. I've noticed your growth, and I'm impressed with how quickly you've adapted. You're an asset to the team, and I think you've got a lot of potential." He was stunned. He hadn't expected such a positive review so early on, but it felt good. It felt like all his hard work was finally paying off. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I really appreciate the feedback," she smiled. "Keep it up and you'll go far here. Just remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about improving every day." Her words stuck with him long after he left her office. They were a reminder that success wasn't about never making mistakes. It was about showing up every day, doing your best, and learning from each experience. The more time he spent at the company, the more he realized how much it had changed him. He was no longer the same person who had started this journey, unsure of his worth and his future. He was more confident now, more capable, and most importantly, he was beginning to feel proud of the work he was doing. But it wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about the people who had believed in him. The girl from the airport, his manager, and his co-workers, they had all played a part in his journey. Without them, he would have never had the chance to prove himself, to build a life that he could be proud of. Every day he reminded himself of how far he had come. He wasn't just a delivery man anymore. He was a part of something bigger, and he was going to keep working hard to make the most of it. Months passed, and life for the delivery man had transformed in ways he could never have imagined. What started as a simple act of kindness, giving a stranger a ride to the airport, had now turned into a full-blown career change, one that not only changed his job but also his outlook on life. The once uncertain man, who had spent so many years driving around, carrying packages from one place to another, was now sitting behind a desk, working on spreadsheets and communicating with clients. But it wasn't just the work that had changed. He had changed. He had become more confident, more self-assured. The man who used to feel like an outsider in this new world now felt like he belonged. He still remembered his first few weeks at the company, the overwhelming feeling of not knowing anything, of being the new guy who was always asking questions and unsure of his place. But now those feelings were behind him. He had proven to himself that he could adapt, that he was capable of more than he had ever thought, and the team around him had noticed. His manager often praised him for his hard work and dedication, and his colleagues had begun to seek his advice on projects. It was a far cry from the isolation he had felt on the delivery route. Now he was part of something bigger. One afternoon, while sitting at his desk, he got a message from his manager. The company was expanding, and they were looking to promote from within. There was a new position opening up, one that involved more responsibility, managing a small team and working closely with the company's upper management. It was a big step, and he was being considered for it. He sat back in his chair, his heart racing. The thought of moving up in the company had never crossed his mind when he had first started. He had been so focused on simply getting through the day, learning the ropes, and proving he could do the job. But now, here he was with an opportunity to take on more, to lead others, and to be part of the company's growth. The decision wasn't easy. He had never thought of himself as someone who could manage others. He had spent so many years on his own, working alone, delivering packages, and staying out of the spotlight. The thought of being in charge of a team was intimidating. But then he thought about how far he had come. If he could adapt to a completely new career, if he could succeed in this unfamiliar environment, then maybe, just maybe, he was ready for this new challenge. After some careful thought, he made his decision. He was going to go for it. He would apply for the position. The worst that could happen was that he didn't get it, but he would never know unless he tried. He had spent too much of his life playing it safe, sticking to what was familiar. It was time to take a leap. The interview for the new position was different from the first one he had had months ago. This time, he was the one sitting across from the hiring managers, answering questions about leadership, strategy, and team management. He had done his research, prepared as much as he could, and hoped that his experience in his current role would be enough to show them that he was ready. The process felt long, and there were moments of doubt. Would they see him as someone capable of leading? Would they think he was too new, too inexperienced for such a big role? But as the interview continued, he began to feel a shift within himself. He was speaking with confidence, answering the questions with clarity, and most importantly, believing in his own abilities. A few days later, he got the call. The position was his. His heart raced as he listened to the hiring manager tell him the good news. He had done it. He had earned the promotion. The same man who had once been uncertain of his future, unsure of his worth, had now climbed to a leadership position. It was a testament to how far he had come and how much he had changed in the past few months. When he hung up the phone, he couldn't help but smile. The hard work, the long days, the struggles, everything had led to this moment. He had proven that he was capable of more, that he was more than just a delivery man. He was someone who could lead, who could inspire others, and who could make a real impact. As he sat in his new office, looking out the window at the bustling city below, he thought back to his old life, the life where he had been stuck in a routine, delivering packages with no clear direction. He had never imagined that one simple act of kindness would lead him to this point. A ride to the airport, a chance encounter with a stranger had set him on a path he never could have foreseen. That night he went home and sat down to write a message to the girl who had changed everything. He couldn't find the right words to express his gratitude, but he knew he had to thank her. Without her, none of this would have been possible. She had given him the opportunity to prove himself, to start over, to become someone he never thought he could be. He typed out a message. "I can't thank you enough for what you did for me. You gave me a chance when I didn't even know I needed one. I've been promoted and I owe so much of it to you. Thank you for believing in me." She responded almost immediately. "I knew you could do it. I'm so proud of you. This is just the beginning. Keep going, and the sky's the limit." Her words filled him with a sense of pride and hope. It wasn't just about the promotion or the new job. It was about the journey, the unexpected turns, the struggles, the small victories. And it was about the people who had been there along the way, who had believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. As the weeks passed, the delivery man, now in a new role, continued to thrive. He learned more about leadership, about managing people, and about being part of something bigger than himself. His team respected him not just for his work ethic, but for the way he treated them, listening to their concerns, offering help when needed, and leading with integrity. He often thought back to the day he had given the girl a ride to the airport. That single moment had changed the course of his life, and he would never forget it. He was no longer just a man making deliveries. He was someone who had embraced change, taken risks, and built a life he could be proud of. In the end, the delivery man realized that success wasn't just about where you ended up. It was about the journey, the lessons learned, and the people you met along the way. He had come a long way from that man who was unsure of his place in the world. And as he looked ahead to the future, he knew that no matter what challenges came his way, he would face them head on. After all, he had already proven that he was capable of so much more than he had ever imagined. As the months went by, life continued to evolve for the man who had once been a simple delivery driver. He had risen through the ranks, earned a promotion, and had now found himself in a position where he was not just managing a team, but leading them. It was a responsibility he didn't take lightly, and every day he worked hard to prove that he was capable of the role. The job wasn't always easy. There were days when things didn't go as planned, when deadlines were missed, or when team members struggled to meet expectations. But he had learned something important over the past year. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about how you responded to the challenges and how you helped others rise to meet them. He had become more than just a manager. He had become a mentor. He didn't just give orders. He took the time to listen, to understand the concerns of his team, and to offer guidance where he could. And as a result, his team respected him. They saw him as someone who wasn't just there to tell them what to do, but someone who genuinely cared about their success. One afternoon, as he sat in his office, he received an email from the same company that had offered him the first job, the company that had given him the chance to prove himself. They had seen his progress, and now they were reaching out to offer him another opportunity, a chance to expand his role even further. The email detailed a new project, one that would require him to travel across the country, working with various teams in different locations. It was a big step, a chance to truly make an impact on a larger scale. But it was also a huge challenge. He had never managed teams in multiple locations before, and the thought of being away from home for extended periods was both exciting and daunting. He knew it would require a lot of time and energy, but he also knew it was the kind of opportunity that didn't come around often. He sat there for a long time, reading the email over and over. On one hand, he was thrilled. It was everything he had worked for. The chance to take his career to the next level, to prove that he was ready for bigger challenges. On the other hand, he felt a pang of doubt. Was he really ready for this? Could he handle the pressure of managing multiple teams? being away from home and still maintaining the balance he had worked so hard to establish? He thought back to his early days at the company, to the fear and uncertainty he had felt when he first started. He remembered how overwhelmed he had been, how unsure he was of his abilities, but he had gotten through it. He had faced each challenge head-on and had come out stronger on the other side. With a deep breath, he made his decision. He would take the opportunity. It was a chance to grow, to push himself further than he ever had before, and most importantly, it was a chance to show everyone, including himself, that he was capable of more than he had ever imagined. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. He spent long hours preparing for the project, coordinating with different teams and making travel arrangements. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he felt a sense of purpose that he hadn't felt before. This was more than just a job, it was a mission. He was about to embark on an adventure that would test everything he had learned over the past year. As the first leg of his journey began, he couldn't help but think about how far he had come. Just a few years ago, he had been a delivery driver, unsure of what his future held. Now he was traveling across the country, leading teams and shaping the direction of the company. It was a life he had never imagined for himself, but it was the life he had earned. The first few weeks on the road were exhausting. He found himself juggling meetings, conference calls, and long hours in airports and hotel rooms. There were moments when he felt overwhelmed, moments when he questioned whether he had made the right choice. But in those moments, he reminded himself of the bigger picture. He was doing this for his team, for the company, and for himself. He had worked hard to get here, and he wasn't going to give up now. The project was a success, but it wasn't without its challenges. There were setbacks along the way, miscommunications, delays, and unexpected obstacles. But through it all, he kept his cool. He communicated with his team, solved problems as they arose, and stayed focused on the end goal. And in the end, the project was completed successfully, with all of the teams meeting their targets and exceeding expectations. It was a huge accomplishment, one that he couldn't have achieved alone. He knew that his team's success was a reflection of his own leadership, and he was proud of everything they had accomplished together. As he returned home after the final phase of the project, he felt a sense of satisfaction that he had never experienced before. He had pushed himself to the limit, and he had come out on top. But more than that, he had learned valuable lessons about leadership, about what it meant to be a good manager, and about how to handle the pressures of a fast-paced, high-stakes job. One night, as he sat at home reflecting on everything he had accomplished, his phone rang. It was the girl from the airport, the one who had helped him get the job in the first place. "Hey," she said, her voice warm and familiar. "I've been thinking about you. How's everything going?" He smiled. "It's going great. Actually, I just finished a big project. I traveled all over the country, worked with a bunch of different teams. It was intense, but we pulled it off." She laughed. "I knew you could do it. You've come such a long way since that first day I met you." He couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude. "I owe a lot of it to you," he said. "You gave me the chance when no one else did. I don't think I'd be where I am today without your help." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I'm really proud of you," she said softly. "You've worked so hard and you've really earned everything you've gotten." The words meant more to him than he could express. She had been there for him when he needed it most, offering him the chance that changed his life. And now here he was, living a life he had never dreamed possible. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for believing in me." "You did all the work," she replied. "I just helped open the door." As they ended the conversation, he sat back in his chair, reflecting on everything that had happened. He had come so far, not just in his career, but in his life. He had found a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, and most importantly, he had found a way to give back, to be the person who believed in others just as she had believed in him. Life wasn't perfect, and there would always be challenges ahead. But he had learned something important, that with hard work, dedication, and the belief in yourself, anything was possible. And as he looked ahead, he knew that no matter where his journey took him, he would face it with the same determination that had gotten him this far. He had proven to himself that he was capable of more than he had ever imagined. And now he was ready for whatever came next.